Most people first heard the name Jeffrey Epstein through headlines filled with mystery, wealth, power, and silence. But long before the world began asking questions, his story had already been unfolding quietly behind closed doors. This is not just a story about one man. It is a story about influence, secrecy, unanswered questions, and the uncomfortable space where money and power meet justice. To understand why this case still captures global attention, we have to begin at the beginning, before the investigations, before the courtrooms, and before the world was watching. Jeffrey Epstein did not start as a public figure surrounded by controversy. In his early years, he appeared to follow a path that looked surprisingly ordinary. He worked in finance, built connections, and slowly entered circles filled with extraordinary wealth. Over time, those connections became the foundation of a life that seemed almost untouchable from the outside. Private jets, exclusive islands, famous acquaintances, and financial success created an image of authority and legitimacy. To many observers, he looked like another powerful financier moving comfortably among elites. But power often creates distance, and distance can hide truths that remain invisible for years. Rumors and concerns did not appear suddenly. They surfaced slowly, quietly, and often without consequence. In many complex cases involving wealth and influence, early warning signs are dismissed, minimized, or buried beneath reputation. What makes the Epstein story so disturbing to many people is not only the allegations themselves, but the question of how long those allegations remained in the shadows. When the first serious legal attention arrived, the world did not immediately grasp the scale of what was being described. Legal language, sealed documents, and private settlements kept much of the story fragmented. For years, information appeared in pieces rather than in a clear, complete picture. And when information is incomplete, public understanding remains uncertain. Some believed justice had already been served. Others believed the real story had not yet been told. This tension between appearance and reality became one of the defining features of the entire case. As time passed, investigative journalism began to play a crucial role. Reporters started connecting details that had once seemed unrelated. Documents were re-examined, testimonies were revisited, patterns slowly became visible. And once patterns become visible, silence becomes harder to maintain. Public attention grew, and with it came pressure. Pressure on institutions, pressure on legal systems, and pressure on individuals connected to the story. High-profile associations that once looked ordinary began to raise uncomfortable questions. How much did people know? When did they know it? And why did accountability seem delayed? These questions transformed the case from a legal matter into a global conversation about power and responsibility. When Epstein was arrested again years later, the reaction was immediate and intense. For many, it felt like a turning point. For others, it felt long overdue. Media coverage expanded rapidly, and the story reached audiences far beyond the United States. People who had never followed financial news or legal cases suddenly recognized the name. The narrative was no longer hidden in court filings. It had entered public consciousness. Yet even at this moment of global focus, uncertainty remained. Legal processes are slow, careful, and often complex. Public expectation, on the other hand, moves quickly. This difference in speed creates frustration, speculation, and sometimes misinformation. Then came the moment that shocked the world and changed the direction of the story entirely. Epstein's death in jail while awaiting trial. Official reports described it as a suicide, but the circumstances immediately triggered widespread doubt, debate, and countless questions. Security failures, missing surveillance clarity, and procedural irregularities became central topics of discussion. Whether driven by grief, anger, or mistrust, the public response was unmistakable. People wanted answers, and more importantly, they wanted transparency. When a case symbolizes larger fears about justice and inequality, every unanswered detail feels significant. After his death, the legal case against Epstein could no longer proceed in the same way, but the story did not end. In some ways, it expanded. Attention shifted toward networks, enablers, institutions, and systems that may have allowed wrongdoing to continue unnoticed or unpunished. Civil cases, document releases, and ongoing investigations kept the issue alive in courts and in media. Survivors' voices became more central, changing the tone of the conversation from speculation to lived experience. Public discourse also began examining broader themes: how wealth influences accountability, how institutions respond to allegations against powerful individuals, and how societies balance skepticism with evidence. These themes reach far beyond a single case, which is why the story continues to resonate. Even years later, new documents, testimonies, and analyses still appear, each adding another layer to an already complex narrative. Some revelations clarify details, others create new questions. This constant evolution keeps public interest alive, but it also demonstrates how difficult it can be to reach complete closure in cases involving secrecy and influence. For many observers, the Epstein case has become less about one individual and more about the structures surrounding him. It forces uncomfortable reflection. Would the outcome have been different without wealth or connections? Do legal systems treat all defendants equally in practice, not just in principle? And how can transparency be strengthened to prevent similar situations in the future? These are not simple questions, and they do not have easy answers, but asking them is part of why the story still matters. Understanding this case requires patience, critical thinking, and caution against jumping to conclusions without verified evidence. In an age of rapid information and viral headlines, careful analysis becomes more important than ever. Because beyond the mystery and controversy lies something deeper: a global conversation about justice, trust, and accountability in the modern world. And that conversation is still unfolding.
New measures were introduced to address the growing housing crisis. This verb is extremely common in IELTS Speaking Part 3 and Listening Section 4. Now listen to a slightly longer sentence. The report outlines several strategies to address environmental challenges. If this sounds natural to you, you are thinking in English, not translating. Before we finish this part, let's review through listening, not explanation. Listen carefully. There has been a significant change in public behavior as people tend to be more aware of environmental issues. This growing concern has forced governments to address the problem more seriously. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, did I understand this as a whole idea, or did I translate word by word? Understanding ideas, not individual words, is exactly what IELTS rewards. In the next part, we'll move into more advanced vocabulary that frequently appears in academic discussions, statistics, and opinions. Bersonraki bebloemd. Crucial contribute to lack of efficient long-term effects. Die Part 2 I'll devum edisikum. Devum super Part 2 I'll devum ediorum. Any format. Temamen iangelitzes, listening odakli, dogolakis. Sadis dinla misi ikim yazalda. IELTS Essential Vocabulary Part 2, Video Script. Let's continue. Relax your shoulders, keep listening, and don't translate. Now we move to a word that appears constantly in IELTS Speaking and Listening. Crucial. This word means extremely important, but it sounds much stronger and more academic than very important. For example, education plays a crucial role in economic development. Listen again. Good communication skills are crucial for success in the workplace. In fast speech, this word is often linked. Crucial role, crucial factor, crucial issue. Now listen carefully to this sentence. Access to clean water is a crucial factor in improving public health. If you caught that naturally, your listening is moving toward Band 7 level. Let's continue. Another key phrase is contribute to. IELTS loves cause and effect language, and this phrase is everywhere. For example, lack of sleep can contribute to poor concentration. Notice that we don't say contribute something. We say contribute to something. Listen again. High levels of stress may contribute to mental health problems. Now, listen to this longer sentence. Urbanization has contributed to increased pollution and traffic congestion. Try to hear the whole idea, not just individual words. Now we introduce a phrase that often appears in problems and solutions. Lack of. For example, a lack of resources is a major challenge in developing countries. Listen carefully. There is a lack of affordable housing in many large cities. In IELTS listening, this phrase can sound very quick, almost like one word. Now listen to this sentence combining ideas. A lack of funding has contributed to delays in the project. If that made sense immediately, you're doing well. Let's move on. Efficient. This word describes something that works well without wasting time, money, or energy. For example, public transport systems need to be more efficient. Listen again. Using renewable energy is a more efficient way to reduce emissions. Now listen to this IELTS-style sentence. Improving efficiency in public services can significantly reduce costs. Notice how efficient often appears with system, process, or method. Now we introduce a phrase IELTS examiners love. Long-term effects. This phrase is extremely common in both speaking part 3 and listening section 4. For example, we need to consider the long-term effects of climate change. Listen again. Poor diet can have serious long-term effects on health. Now listen to this combined sentence. A lack of physical activity may contribute to serious long-term effects on overall well-being. If you understood that smoothly, your listening comprehension is developing naturally. Let's bring several words together now. Listen carefully. Education plays a crucial role in society, but a lack of resources can limit progress. This may contribute to inequality and have serious long-term effects on economic growth. Therefore, investing in efficient systems is essential. Take a breath. Ask yourself again, did I understand the message, not just the words? That's exactly how IELTS listening works. In the next and final part, we'll move into higher-level vocabulary often used for opinions, comparisons, and academic discussions. Bersonraki bebloemd. Crucial contribute to lack of efficient long-term effects. Die Part 2 al devum edicigem. Devum super. Part 2 al devum ediorum. Any format. Tamamen iangilitses, listening odakli, dogolakis. Sadis dinla misi ikin yazilda. IELTS Essential Vocabulary Part 2, Video Script. Let's continue. Relax your shoulders, keep listening, and don't translate. Now we move to a word that appears constantly in IELTS speaking and listening. Crucial. This word means extremely important, but it sounds much stronger and more academic than very important. For example, education plays a crucial role in economic development. Listen again. Good communication skills are crucial for success in the workplace. In fast speech, this word is often linked. Crucial role, crucial factor, crucial issue. Now listen carefully to this sentence. Access to clean water is a crucial factor in improving public health. If you caught that naturally, your listening is moving toward Band 7 level. Let's continue. Another key phrase is contribute to. IELTS loves cause and effect language, and this phrase is everywhere. For example, lack of sleep can contribute to poor concentration. Notice that we don't say contribute something, we say contribute to something. Listen again. High levels of stress may contribute to mental health problems. Now, listen to this longer sentence. Urbanization has contributed to increased pollution and traffic congestion. Try to hear the whole idea, not just individual words. Now we introduce a phrase that often appears in problems and solutions. Lack of. For example, a lack of resources is a major challenge in developing countries. Listen carefully. There is a lack of affordable housing in many large cities. In IELTS listening, this phrase can sound very quick, almost like one word. Now listen to this sentence combining ideas. A lack of funding has contributed to delays in the project. If that made sense immediately, you're doing well. Let's move on. Efficient. This word describes something that works well without wasting time, money, or energy. For example, public transport systems need to be more efficient. Listen again. Using renewable energy is a more efficient way to reduce emissions. Now listen to this IELTS-style sentence. Improving efficiency in public services can significantly reduce cost. Notice how efficient often appears with system, process, or method. Now we introduce a phrase IELTS examiners love. Long-term effects. This phrase is extremely common in both speaking part 3 and listening section 4. For example, we need to consider the long-term effects of climate change. Listen again. Poor diet can have serious long-term effects on health. Now listen to this combined sentence. A lack of physical activity may contribute to serious long-term effects on overall well-being. If you understood that smoothly, your listening comprehension is developing naturally. Let's bring several words together now. Listen carefully. Education plays a crucial role in society, but a lack of resources can limit progress. This may contribute to inequality and have serious long-term effects on economic growth. Therefore, investing in efficient systems is essential. Take a breath. Ask yourself again, Did I understand the message, not just the words? That's exactly how IELTS listening works. In the next and final part, we'll move into higher level vocabulary often used for opinions, comparisons, and academic discussions. Let's move into more advanced language. Listen carefully and focus on meaning. We begin with a word you will often hear in academic discussions. Arguably. This word is used when something can be debated, but the speaker believes it is likely true. For example, this is arguably the most effective solution. Listen again. Online education is arguably more flexible than traditional learning. In IELTS listening, this word often signals an opinion, not a fact. Now listen to this sentence. Climate change is arguably the biggest challenge facing modern societies. If you caught the tone and meaning, that's excellent. Let's continue. In contrast to, this phrase is used to show clear differences. For example, in contrast to urban areas, rural regions face different challenges. Listen again. In contrast to the past, people today rely heavily on technology. This phrase is often used in lectures and academic comparisons. Now listen carefully. In contrast to short-term solutions, long-term planning is more sustainable. Let's move on. A growing number of. This phrase is extremely common in IELTS topics such as technology, health, and education. For example, a growing number of people are working remotely. Listen again. A growing number of students prefer online courses. This phrase usually introduces a trend. Now listen to this sentence. A growing number of individuals are becoming aware of environmental issues. Next, an important expression related to public issues. Raise awareness. This phrase means to increase people's understanding or attention. For example, campaigns aim to raise awareness about mental health. Listen again. Schools play a key role in raising awareness of social issues. Now listen carefully. Media coverage can help raise awareness and influence public opinion. Finally, we reach a phrase that often appears in academic context. From an academic perspective, this phrase is used to introduce a formal analytical viewpoint. For example, from an academic perspective, the results are inconclusive. Listen again. From an academic perspective, this theory has several limitations. Now listen to this final extended passage. From an academic perspective, education is arguably the most powerful tool for social change. In contrast to short-term solutions, long-term investment in learning can have lasting benefits. As a growing number of societies recognize this, efforts to raise awareness about equal access to education continue to expand. If you understood this without translating word by word, your listening level is very strong. Before we finish, reflect for a moment. You didn't memorize lists. You didn't translate sentences. You trained your ear to understand meaning. That is exactly what IELTS listening and speaking require. Thank you for listening. If this practice helped you, come back and listen again another day. Each time, your understanding will become clearer.
Before we begin, if you want to improve your English by listening to real-life stories that feel uncomfortably real, don't forget to subscribe. Now listen carefully. People love to believe that relationships fall apart because of big moments. A huge fight, a betrayal, someone leaving dramatically. But that's not how it usually starts. Sometimes it starts with a normal evening that looks exactly like every other evening before it. That night, nothing felt special. We had already eaten. The TV was on. But neither of us was really watching it. He was scrolling on his phone, and I was half listening to a show I had seen before. It was quiet in a comfortable way. Or at least, I thought it was comfortable. Then he cleared his throat and said my name. Not loudly, not urgently, just enough to make me look at him. He asked if he could say something honest without me getting upset. I remember smiling and saying yes immediately. I didn't even pause to think. When you trust someone, honesty feels safe. It feels like a good thing. Then he asked the question, if I cheated, would you forgive me? For a second, my brain froze. I laughed, because that was the only reaction that made sense at the time. People joke about strange things. Couples joke about dark scenarios. I assumed this was one of those moments. I waited for him to smile or explain. He didn't. He stayed quiet, staring at the floor like he was waiting for an exam result. That was when my stomach dropped. I asked him why he would even ask something like that. He shrugged and said he was just curious, just thinking out loud. But curiosity doesn't sound nervous. Curiosity doesn't avoid eye contact. Curiosity doesn't make a room suddenly feel colder. I tried to move on. I told myself not to be dramatic. But once a sentence like that enters your mind, it doesn't leave quietly. It settles in. It repeats itself. Later that night, when we went to bed, he fell asleep quickly. I didn't. I stared at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over again. I started remembering things I had ignored before. How distant he had been lately. How often he said he was tired. How he used to talk about the future more than he does now. I wondered if I had missed something important. I wondered if that question was a warning disguised as honesty. Or worse, a confession that hadn't fully arrived yet. By the time the sun came up, I was exhausted. Not from lack of sleep, but from too many thoughts. And I knew something had changed, even though nothing had technically happened yet. The days after that question were strangely quiet. Not in a peaceful way, but in a way that made me feel like I was constantly listening for something that never came. He acted normal, too normal. He still said good morning. He still asked how my day was. But everything felt slightly rehearsed, like we were both following a script we hadn't agreed on. I started paying attention to details I had never noticed before. The way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. The way he paused before answering simple questions. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. I told myself I was imagining things. I didn't want to become suspicious. I didn't want to turn into someone who searched for problems just to prove they were right. But doubt has a way of growing quietly. One evening, we were sitting together again, almost in the exact same place where he had asked that question. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and immediately turned it face down. The movement was quick, almost automatic. I felt something tighten in my chest. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't say anything at all. Instead, I smiled and kept talking about my day, pretending I hadn't noticed. That was the moment I realized how fragile trust really is. It doesn't disappear with a loud sound. It fades while you're trying to protect it. That night, I replayed every recent interaction in my head. I wondered if he was hiding something, or if he was simply dealing with something he didn't know how to explain. The uncertainty was exhausting. I wanted clarity, but I was afraid of what clarity might bring. I missed the version of our relationship where silence didn't feel threatening, where questions didn't feel dangerous. Over time, I began to understand that waiting for answers can hurt more than hearing the truth. And the longer I waited, the heavier everything became. I finally asked, not because I was brave, but because I was tired. Tired of guessing, tired of overthinking, tired of pretending everything was fine. We were standing in the kitchen, the room filled with that uncomfortable silence I had grown used to. I asked him if there was something he wanted to tell me. He didn't answer immediately. He leaned against the counter, closed his eyes for a moment, and took a deep breath. That pause told me everything before he even spoke. He said he hadn't cheated. He said there was no other woman. And for a second, I felt relief wash over me. But then he continued. He said he had been questioning us, not because I wasn't enough, but because he didn't recognize himself anymore. He said he felt lost, unsure of what he wanted, unsure of who he was becoming. He admitted that asking me if I trusted him wasn't about my trust at all. It was about his guilt for feeling uncertain while pretending to be certain. That hurt in a way I hadn't expected, because you can't fight doubt the same way you fight betrayal. I realized then that love doesn't always end with someone leaving. Sometimes it ends with someone staying while their heart slowly moves away. We talked for hours that night. There were tears, long pauses, and moments where neither of us knew what to say. In the end, there was no dramatic breakup, no clear ending. Just an understanding that some questions don't have clean answers. When I went to bed that night, I understood something important. Trust isn't just about believing someone won't hurt you. It's about believing you'll survive even if they do. And that realization changed me more than any confession ever could.
The internet has connected millions of people from different cultures, countries, and backgrounds. But sometimes, it also shows us just how strange human behavior can be. Today, we're going to look at a mix of real Reddit stories, online interactions, and internet moments that made people stop and think, how did this even happen? These are not fictional stories. They're shared by real people, describing situations that are awkward, confusing, sometimes funny, and sometimes uncomfortable. Let's start with the first one. This story comes from a Reddit thread about online arguments. A user shared that they commented something very simple under a video, not political, not offensive, just a basic opinion. Within minutes, someone replied aggressively. Then another person joined. Then another. Suddenly, a normal comment section turned into a full argument between strangers who had never met, and never would. The original poster said they stopped replying, but the argument continued without them. People were insulting each other, correcting grammar, questioning intelligence. All over a comment the original person didn't even care that much about. The strangest part? People kept coming back to win a discussion that meant absolutely nothing in real life. The Reddit user ended the story by saying, "That's when I realized the internet isn't about being right. It's about being loud." Psychologists call this online disinhibition. When people feel anonymous, they say things they would never say face to face. The screen creates distance, and distance removes empathy. This next story involves a cultural misunderstanding that quickly turned embarrassing. A British Reddit user shared that they were chatting online with people from different countries. At some point, someone made fun of the way British people speak. Instead of getting angry, the British user responded politely and explained the cultural difference. That response made the situation worse. Other users joined in, mocking accents, spelling, and traditions, assuming they were superior. What shocked the original poster wasn't the jokes. People were loudly correcting things they were completely wrong about. One comment confidently explained British culture incorrectly. Another tried to educate someone who literally lived there. The internet gives people confidence without knowledge. One of the strangest things about the internet is this: the quieter they tend to be. And the less someone knows, the louder they often get. If you think this is strange, wait until the next story. This story comes from a Reddit confession thread. A user explained that late one night they were tired, scrolling on their phone, half asleep. They were typing a private message to a friend, complaining about someone they worked with. They finished the message. They hit send and immediately realized they sent it to the wrong person. They sent it to the coworker they were talking about. The message wasn't aggressive, but it was honest. They froze. Then a single message arrived. The Reddit user said that moment felt longer than any meeting they had ever sat through. The next day at work, the coworker didn't yell. Instead, they asked to talk privately. What followed wasn't an argument, but an uncomfortable, honest conversation that probably should have happened months earlier. The user ended the post by saying, "It was terrifying, but it also fixed something I kept avoiding." Many people use the internet to avoid difficult conversations, but sometimes this next story comes from an "Am I the asshole?" thread. A user asked whether they were wrong for cutting off a longtime friend. The friend constantly made jokes about their job, their life choices. The user said they laughed along for years, until one day they realized they felt smaller every time they met. When they finally confronted the friend, the response was, "You're too sensitive. It's just jokes." That's when the user decided to stop replying. No big fight, just distance. Some people said the user overreacted. Others said they protected their mental health. If someone hurts you and calls it humor, it's not humor. One of the hardest lessons people learn is this: just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal. Before this video ends, there's one story that stayed with thousands of people. Not because it was shocking and real. This story was shared anonymously. A user wrote about someone they used to talk to every day. Messages, long late-night conversations, then slowly, busy. Until one day, the user sent a simple message. "Did I do something wrong?" But never answered. Then weeks. Not for an explanation. The post ended with one sentence, but the stories that stay with us even when we don't want them to. If any of these stories felt close to home, and if you want more real stories from the internet,
Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. So today we're doing something a little different, and honestly highly ambitious. We're going to be unpacking a massive 30-page masterclass on NATO's 2026 digital transformation. But here's the twist. We're also going to master some elite English defense vocabulary along the way. So whether you're a massive tech nerd, an engineering student, or you just really love advanced language learning, this dual language format is absolutely going to change how you look at modern military alliances. Let's get right into it. But first, let's put your historical intuition to the test right out of the gate. Before we get into the crazy high-tech mechanics of autonomous defense systems, let's do a quick trivia check. In which city and on what exact date was the foundational North Atlantic Treaty signed? Was it A, London in March 1947, B, Washington, D.C. in April 1949, or C, Paris in May 1951? Go ahead and lock in your answer mentally, or, just drop it in the comments right now, because I promise to reveal the correct answer at the very end. To truly understand where we are in 2026, we have to look at this massive geopolitical shift. The very nature of unity has undergone a radical paradigm shift. I mean, we used to define defense by heavy metal, right? Think heavy artillery, armored divisions, massive naval fleets. But today, the front line is literally the electromagnetic spectrum and cyberspace. We're talking about autonomous drone swarms and neural networks making microsecond decisions just to shield civilian power grids. It's a whole new world. Section 1. The imperative of interoperability. Okay, think about the massive challenge here for a second. How do 32 distinct sovereign nations, each with its own native language, its own military traditions, its own domestic supply chains, actually function as a single cohesive unit? Well, the answer is interoperability. For our language learners out there, let's break this down. It's the structural and algorithmic capability of disparate systems to exchange data and operate cohesively without requiring manual translation or causing operational friction. If you're working in the defense space, this word is your absolute foundation. You literally cannot operate without it. And this right here brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the engineering challenge we're talking about. Just imagine this. A radar installation on the Mediterranean coast of Turkey detects an aerial anomaly. In a fraction of a millisecond, that exact sensor data must be processed, encrypted, and transmitted thousands of miles to an airborne warning system over Northern Europe, which then has to instantly synchronize with a North American missile defense battery. If they use incompatible data encryption, the system experiences catastrophic latency. And in 2026, latency doesn't just mean a minor delay on your screen, it means total defense failure. All right, Section 2, Strategic Deterrence in Cyberspace. So, let's explore a concept that has completely dominated international relations since the dawn of the atomic age, but looks, well, very different today. The crucial point here is understanding the word deterrence. Derived from the Latin verb deterre, which means to frighten away, deterrence is basically the practice of maintaining such formidable defensive capabilities that an adversary chooses not to attack, because they realize the cost far outweighs any potential gain. For decades, this meant physical troops standing on borders. But today, cyber deterrence has completely eclipsed that traditional posture in daily operational importance. Under NATO's famous Article 5, which you probably know is the Mutual Defense Clause, an attack against one is an attack against all. What's super fascinating is that alliance leaders have now explicitly clarified that severe digital sabotage is treated with the exact same severity as a physical military invasion. So we're talking about malicious actors attempting to paralyze a financial grid or hack the SCADA systems of a nuclear power station. A digital threat is now, for all intents and purposes, a physical reality. Moving on to Section 3, Overcoming Operational Bottlenecks. Of course, transforming 32 different nations into a flawless digital fortress is incredibly complex. Command structures regularly hit severe growing pains here. And that brings us to a really great metaphorical noun, bottleneck. Literally, it's the narrow neck of a glass bottle restricting liquid, right? But in engineering and geopolitics, it's a point of congestion or resource scarcity that restricts the efficiency of an entire process. Right now, a massive bottleneck is the global shortage of specialized electrical engineers. You could have the best AI in the world, but if you lack the human engineers to maintain the physical high-voltage converters and wide-bandgap semiconductors, your whole system is incredibly fragile. Let's actually look at how this plays out in the real world. Imagine a quick engineering consultation between a systems architect, let's call her Elena, and an electronics specialist, Marcus. So, Elena spots a massive latency spike during cross-border data transfers. Marcus identifies the problem. A legacy protocol is acting as a severe bottleneck. The solution? They upgrade those edge nodes to cutting-edge optical converters. Instantly, system throughput is fixed, allowing multi-sensor data to process seamlessly. Boom, problem identified, bottleneck eliminated. Section 4, the AI and autonomous surge. As those structural bottlenecks get resolved, we enter arguably the most dynamic phase of 2026 defense. Defense budgets are undergoing a massive transformation. AI and predictive machine learning investments are completely skyrocketing. Let's highlight that energetic phrasal verb real quick, to skyrocket. Like a firework shooting vertically into the air, it means to increase at an extraordinarily rapid rate. Defense expenditure allocated to autonomous machine learning research hasn't just grown, actually, scratch that, it has skyrocketed across all member budgets. What's truly staggering here is the sheer speed of modern electronic warfare. Think about this. A highly trained human operator reading a radar console needs several seconds to perceive a threat, evaluate its trajectory, and execute a countermeasure. But an AI-driven defense matrix, it analyzes millions of data points per microsecond across satellite and thermal sensors, deploying countermeasures before a human brain even processes the initial alert. It is mind-blowing. Since we're mastering the language of tech today, here is a brilliant linguistic trick for you. In formal, diplomatic, and engineering documentation, the passive voice is absolutely essential. It maintains objectivity and authority. Instead of using the active voice, like engineers deploy AI tools, a strategic planner will use the passive voice. Artificial intelligence tools are being deployed. See what happened there? It cleverly shifts the emphasis to the vital technological system itself, rather than the agent doing the action. Similarly, when executives broadcast key statements, they often use advanced grammatical inversion to add intense rhetorical gravity. Instead of the standard everyday, we rarely see such seamless integration. They flip it. Rarely have we seen such seamless integration. It's a subtle tweak for sure, but it instantly commands respect and grabs attention on a global stage. And that brings us to Section 5, Round-the-Clock Cyber Resilience, which really points us to the final operational reality of 2026. The integration of cutting-edge tech demands continuous vigilance. State-sponsored bots and hostile cyber actors do not care about time zones, and they certainly don't care about traditional office hours. That's exactly why centralized cyber defense hubs operate around the clock. This is a fantastic idiomatic expression, meaning they function continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without any pause. A strategic network can be targeted at 3 a.m. just as easily as it can at noon. To really illustrate this, let's look at a strategic briefing scenario. Let's say a delegate asks how Article 5 applies to untraceable botnets. Director Vance replies, by utilizing predictive neural networks operating around the clock, we can attribute attack vectors with high accuracy. Your assessment was spot on. Spot on is an incredible idiom meaning completely accurate or perfectly aligned with the truth. Human expertise combined with autonomous threat hunting is exactly how they neutralize zero-day vulnerabilities in real time. All right, we've covered some incredible ground today, which means it's time to revisit our hook from the very beginning. Did you get the quiz right? The foundational North Atlantic Treaty was signed in B, Washington, D.C., on April 4th, 1949. If you locked in B, your historical intuition was absolutely spot on. 12 founding nations laid the groundwork back in 1949, and today, that exact same alliance is forging a unified digital shield. Let's do a rapid-fire recap of the high-level vocabulary we mastered today. Interoperability is seamless technical coordination. Deterrence is a strategic posture of prevention. A bottleneck is a point of congestion. To skyrocket means a rapid, dramatic increase. Cutting edge is ultra-modern tech. Around the clock means nonstop, 24/7 operation. And spot on means completely accurate. Try sprinkling these into your next professional presentation or essay. It really elevates your language. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a heavy, lingering thought. As we've seen today, speed is everything. So here is a provocative debate prompt for you. To what extent should automated neural networks be given operational autonomy without direct human intervention? How much power should we really hand over to the machine to keep us safe? It's a tough one, right? Think about it and let's get a vibrant discussion going down in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you all next time.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling something that is absolutely crucial, yet it's honestly one of the trickiest parts of the English language. I mean, have you ever felt that deep, incredibly annoying frustration where your grammar is practically perfect, you've literally studied for years, but the absolute second you step into a real, native-speed conversation, you just feel completely lost? Well, let me tell you, you are definitely not alone. The culprit here is almost always our topic for today, phrasal verbs. So, what exactly are we dealing with here? A phrasal verb is just a standard verb combined with one or two small words, usually a preposition or an adverb. But here's the real magic trick. Adding those tiny words completely transforms the original meaning of the verb. It's like a linguistic shapeshifter. And you absolutely need to know these, mostly because native speakers use them constantly. I'm not kidding. They are baked into almost every single conversation you will ever hear. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast between formal, textbook English and the everyday conversational English you actually need. You see, instead of saying increase, a native speaker will almost always just say go up. Instead of postpone, they'll casually drop in put off. If you aren't familiar with these conversational counterparts, you're basically missing half the language. Now, don't worry, I know it feels like a massive topic, but we've logically chunked this high-volume list into a simple day-in-the-life journey to make it super easy and memorable. We'll cover morning routines, navigating work and school, social life, general phrases, and finish up with how to practice. Okay, let's dive into this. With Section 1, Morning Routines and Time, starting your day off right. What's really fascinating here is the difference between two actions that usually happen within minutes of each other. Wake up means to literally stop sleeping and open your eyes. But get up means physically hauling your body out of bed. So think about your own morning today. What time did you wake up? And what time did you actually get up? For a lot of us, there's a good 20-minute gap between those two, right? Continuing with our morning, we have these essential foundational actions. Get ready is simply how we prepare ourselves for the day. You might say, it takes me 20 minutes to get ready. Then we start interacting with our environment. We turn on the lights or turn off the TV. We start or stop those devices. And of course, we put on our jacket to get dressed and take off our shoes at the door. Now, these might seem super basic, but trust me, native speakers use these exact verbs every single day without fail. Moving right along, we hit Section 2, Navigating Work and School, where we get into business and academics. Once you get to the office or the classroom, you'll hear these specific phrases in almost every single meeting you sit in. For instance, in problem solving, we don't just solve things, we figure out how a machine works, or we deal with a difficult client to handle the situation. When it comes to admin and tasks, you fill out an application form to complete it, and you hand in your homework when it's time to submit. And what about innovation? Well, you come up with a great project idea. Notice how just understanding these micro-contexts instantly makes you feel way more comfortable and confident in a professional setting. So the crucial point is right here with the phrase look forward to. It means to feel really excited about something coming up, like the weekend. But pay close attention to this grammar rule. The word to acts as a preposition here, not as part of an infinitive verb. That means if an action follows it, it absolutely must have an ing ending. You don't say, looking forward to see you. You say, looking forward to seeing you. Definitely keep that rule in your back pocket. Before we clock out of the office, let's contrast two really powerful management actions. Take the phrase put off, which means to postpone, as in, let's not put off this meeting again. And then there's take over, meaning to assume control, like he took over the company. Feeling the rhythm and the authority of these phrases is totally key to understanding workplace dynamics. Now that the workday is done, let's transition into Section 3, Social Life and Relationships, looking at what happens after hours. You can actually think of the entire life cycle of socializing as a little mini-story. It usually starts when you hang out, spend casual time together, maybe down at the beach. And because you get along with them so well, you have a really great relationship. But hey, sometimes things go wrong, and you might break up, officially ending that romantic relationship. Luckily, after some time passes, you talk it through and you make up, reconciling after the fight. Hang out, get along, break up, make up. It's basically the plot of every single romantic comedy out there. And during your social time, you'll probably have some unexpected encounters too. You might run into an old teacher at the supermarket, meaning you meet them totally by chance. Or a friend might ask you to look after their dog for the weekend, which just means to take care of it. These two are heavily featured in TV shows and movies. And honestly, now that we've defined them, I guarantee you're going to start noticing them absolutely everywhere. Which brings us to Section 4, high-frequency general phrases that you'll see everywhere, all the time. Let's move to and see how this builds our overall conversational fluency. These verbs are incredibly versatile. Give up means to stop trying. Go on means to continue a story. Find out is how you discover information, like, say, finding out a concert was canceled. Get over is recovering from something, like a bad cold.
Bring up means to mention a topic in conversation or even to raise a child. And check out means to look at or examine something, like checking out a cool new restaurant. These are absolutely foundational at every single level of English, so definitely try using these in your own sentences. Finally, we arrive at Section 5, How to Practice Effectively, giving you some real, actionable takeaways. All right, here are 4 actionable steps to mastery. And listen, this structured approach is quite literally your golden ticket to sounding totally natural. Step 1, learn full sentences. Don't just memorize the isolated words, give up. Memorize the full, impactful phrase, never give up. Step 2, group them by topic, just like we did today, morning, work, social. Context is everything for your memory. Step 3, apply them to your day immediately. Literally start describing your own morning out loud using wake up and get up. And Step 4, take notes while watching English TV and review those notes weekly. This kind of active listening is what turns passive exposure into active fluency.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to turn it over to you. Which phrasal verb gives you the most trouble? The English language is completely full of these hidden linguistic traps, where one tiny little preposition changes the whole shebang. So identify your blind spots, practice them, and master them. Keep listening, keep practicing, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.
Hello there, humans. Still scrolling through TikTok to learn English grammar? Stop it. Just stop it. Let a horse clear your mind today. You know, you humans always fight over silly things. Who is richer? Who has more followers? But back in the late 19th century, 2 genius minds fought over something much bigger: electricity. And honestly, it was absolute, pure drama. Welcome to history's greatest rivalries. Today, the untold war between Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison. Listen carefully to my words, because by the end of this story, you won't just learn history. Your English vocabulary and listening will reach a whole new level. Let me set the stage for you. Picture New York City in the 1880s. The streets were dark, dirty, and smelled, well, almost as bad as a barn. Thomas Edison was already an American superstar. Well, he was a businessman, a master of publicity, and a ruthless inventor. Everyone thought he invented the light bulb, right? Actually, he just improved an old idea. But hey, his marketing team was amazing. He built factories, hired hundreds of workers, and wanted to power the entire world with his technology. Then, on a cold afternoon, a tall, quiet young man stepped off a boat from Europe, Nikola Tesla. Tesla had practically no money. He had 4 cents in his pocket, a book of poetry, and a mind filled with wild, unbelievable ideas about the future. Edison was pragmatic and grounded. Tesla was an absolute dreamer. Edison was driven by profit. Tesla was driven by vision. They were like oil and water. They just couldn't mix. Yet Edison hired Tesla at his company, and one day, he made a famous deal. Edison promised Tesla, "If you can completely redesign my broken electricity generators, I'll pay you $50,000. $50,000 back in 1884? That was a horse-sized fortune. You could buy a whole ranch with that. So Tesla worked like a machine, day and night. He barely slept. He barely ate. He completely fixed Edison's generators. But when he finally walked into Edison's office and asked for his payment, Edison just leaned back in his chair and laughed. He said, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." Cold-blooded, right? He didn't pay him a single penny. Tesla quit immediately. He was so broke, so completely penniless, that he had to dig ditches in the streets of New York for $1 a day just to buy food. Imagine that, a genius, digging holes in the dirt. But true genius cannot stay buried for long. You see, Edison advocated for direct current, or DC, but DC was weak. It couldn't travel more than 1 mile without losing its power. You would need a power plant on every corner. Tesla had a far superior idea: alternating current, or AC. A C power could travel hundreds of miles through simple wires without losing energy. It could power an entire city from miles away. And that sparked the legendary current war. Edison got scared. He was terrified of losing his empire. He knew Tesla's system was superior, so what did he do? Did he try to invent a better system? No. He started a dark, dirty smear campaign. Edison tried to convince the public that Tesla's AC current was deadly and dangerous. He even publicly electrocuted poor animals on stage, just to make people terrified of Tesla's power. Horrible, truly horrible behavior. But truth always wins, doesn't it? In 1893, the World's Fair was held in Chicago. It was the biggest event on Earth. Edison demanded a fortune to light up the fair, so the organizers hired Tesla instead. On opening night, Tesla threw the switch. In a single second, hundreds of thousands of light bulbs illuminated the entire city in brilliant, glowing light. It was majestic. The crowd gasped in awe. Tesla won the war. Today, the electricity powering the device you are watching this on? Yes, that's Tesla's dream. Tesla won the technology war, but did he win at life? Unfortunately, no. Tesla was an eccentric man. He was obsessed with the number 3. He washed his hands constantly, and in his final years, he lived alone, talking to wild pigeons in Central Park. He died penniless, in a small hotel room, with only pigeons by his side. Tesla lost his entire fortune because he was a pure idealist who didn't understand how business works. He cared about humanity, not money. But what happens when a brilliant idealist does know how to play the business game? In our next episode, we explore the legendary war between two men who built the digital world, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. You don't want to miss that one. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, unless you want to stay in the dark like Edison's old light bulbs. See you in the next lesson, humans. Keep learning.